Hey everybody, welcome. We are at part two today. If you are here for part one, thank you for for coming back. If you missed part one, it will be all on all of our YouTube channels, and I'm going to bring up my uh, co-hosts in a minute. Just wanted to say replay, yes, part two. If you're watching this, I'm going to bring them up now. If you're watching this, the link that you used to sign up is still active. So if you know anyone who wants to that you can share this with, feel free to share the link. Did everybody put the day part one on their channels? Everyone upload that yet? Not yet. Okay, well, they will. So, all right. So I have the awesome pleasure of introducing my amazing co-hosts. I'm going to go in my clockwise. Nicole Ricci from New York Small Pharma, Annette Fernandez from Audubon Hayes Society, and Beck, I can't remember your last name, from Mary Says NY. So I'd love for each of them to introduce themselves properly and tell you a little bit about their organizations, and then we can jump in. And then we have a guest that we're actually really happy to have as well. So Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We're really honored to be able to bring this to the community. We hope you find it helpful. I'm super honored to be co-hosting this with our super co-hosts that are here. And Mary Says New York is going to be taking this one. And I'm going to be backstage listening with everyone else. New York Small Pharma is a not-for-profit, a 501c3 in New York not-for-profit. Our mission is to advocate and foster a socially just, environmentally regenerative, and economically inclusive cannabis community. And we do that by bringing plant education to the consumer, to the industry stakeholder, and to the decision makers. So we're very focused on education and in that, how to grow cannabis that's socially and environmentally conscious. So thanks for having us.
Thank you, Nicole. Annette?
And thank you. Also feeling grateful to be on this panel and grateful for all the folks that watched the first part. My name's Annette Fernandez. I'm an activist and a patient since I was 18. I'm from Washington Heights and founder of Audubon Hayes Society. I was formerly co-founder of Uptown Cannabis Coalition with Beck Hickey. And Audubon Hayes Society is what will eventually be a not-for-profit organization for economic restorative justice, focused on the preservation of our history and the culture of Hayes Uptown and, you know, how this all started 30 plus years ago. So I'm honored to be here, honored to represent those voices in the conversation, and just feeling grateful about the space and the diversity of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Beck?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. And like Annette said, I was partners with her in the Uptown Cannabis Coalition. We, really sort of started out to educate ourselves and educate everybody in this space just by sharing information. So I'm sort of carrying that on. And so my Instagram is a educational resource, sharing voices, elevating opportunities so that everyone has a chance to learn and access any resources that are out there. I'm really excited about this series that we're doing because it has forced me to really dive into these regs and learn them in a way that I may not have if I was just reading them by myself. So I really appreciate everybody that's here tonight. And I'm hoping you all get something out of it. We're going to go through tonight processing regulations. Annette went through sort of the Section 120 on Tuesday. And so we're going to continue it on now and get into the individual regs. So processing for the first half, and I have a guest joining me, and then we'll be doing retail after the fact. And I have a child here that's dancing off screen, so I apologize.
Again, as last time, we are all working women, working moms, and Got to give us some pause here. I just would like to say, I'd like to introduce myself. I forgot me, Tanya here.
Yes, the woman of the hours.
Tanya, no. We are the women of the hour. We all are the women of the hour.
Put this together. Thank the production.
Founder of the Canadiva. Some of you know me from my day job, but this is a Canadiva production. And we started really with the purpose of having a community, a space for women to just be who they are. Our community is very intersectional. We are women focused. We are women led. And our goal is to destigmatize, be a center for education, be a platform and a community to support women in the community, women outside of the community, patients, caregivers, what have you. We want to be a safe space for all women and cannabis, not women in cannabis specifically, women and cannabis. So thank you. All right. So, Beck, this is your show tonight. I'm going to bring up your guest. We can all chit chat a little bit. I actually know your guest, so I was super excited to know that she was coming on. So would you like to introduce her?
Yes, we have Glenna from Glenna CBD. She is, are you bringing her on? She is a cultivator and a processor in New York. And I really wanted to bring in somebody who's sort of living these processing regulations so that we can talk through them. And, you know, we have the opportunity now to comment and hopefully make changes that will benefit this industry moving forward. So, you know, if you're out there and you're watching and you're catching things that you really feel are up for discussion, please share your voices. And the goal of all of this is to collect comments and encourage you in whatever way you want to. We have resources that we'll go over later, but we encourage you to collect your comments and share those with the OCM, because that's how we as a community can build this industry into something we really can benefit from.
Very cool. Thank you. So I'm going to pop off. I'm going to stay on the back because I'm monitoring the comments and stuff like that. So if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. I will pop them on screen and they will address them. Remember, the first hour is retail?
Processing.
Okay. I'm sorry. I got the slides too, so I can't mess them up. All right. I will see you guys, and I'm leaving you at it, but I'm here taking notes because now I don't have to do all the
have
reading.
fun, processors.
Glenna, can you just take a minute and introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. And as you said, I'm Glenna Cooperative from Glenna CBD, and also Glenna & Co. So if you go to glennas.com, it talks a little bit about the processing. But like you aptly stated, I've been in this place for a long time with hemp and CBD, and then was able to successfully win a license for cultivation as well as processing. So it's been an interesting, exciting journey, and it's not without its stressors or its opportunities to make it a little easier in some aspects, but happy to share what's, our best practices, our wins, our pain points, like everything that we've experienced. So feel free to ask any question. If I know it, I'll answer. But again, I have great people around me that know a lot too. So thank you, Beck.
Great. I put together slides to everybody watching. We're not going to go through these regulations line by line. We are really just trying to highlight the biggest points, especially with processing. A lot of the regulations are directives on how to handle compliance issues, how to document everything that's happening in your business as a processor. So I tried to not get too down and dirty into that unless Glenna says, hey, hold on a second, this part we need to talk about. But really hit on some of the bigger issues that are commentable. I can't control the slides. Tanya, are you controlling? Okay. So I wanted to just touch on the fees. We spoke about these briefly on Tuesday, I think. Application fee across the board for Non-ROs is $1,000, non-refundable. The processing licenses have tiers to them. So if you are applying for a processing license that includes extraction, infusing, blending, packaging, labeling, and branding, the whole thing, then it's $7,000 per premises. If you're just doing infusing, blending, hold on a second, take a key. Infusing, blending, packaging, labeling, and branding, it drops down to $4,000. And then if you're really focusing more on packaging, labeling, branding, and doing exclusive white labeling agreements, then you're down to $2,000 per premises. And if you're doing a combination, which seems to be, is that what you are doing, Glenna? A combination of processing with cultivation, then
Yes,
the application
yes.
fee is $500.
You're right. I'm doing cultivation, so that's a totally separate license. That's an AUCC, so it's a conditional cultivator, but I'm also doing processing. And in the processing, I do extraction and manufacturing, yes.
Oh, okay. So if you are doing that, so if you want to be a cultivator with processing, can you do everything, or do they sort of limit how much processing you can do?
No, I seemingly to your point, I don't have that same limitation. If you have the only limitation, if you will, is as long as you're following all the rules and the audits and whatnot, and the regulatory aspects of it. If you may be just a manufacturer where you buy distillate from someone who extracted, or you may have an extraction and manufacturing license where you can extract your own, using different techniques and make your own products. You can also sell what you extract to other processors too that may not have an extraction license.
Okay. And then the question I have is, so I think for now you guys have limited, you have distribution abilities? Like
Yes.
processors can distribute directly to the stores. Will that continue, or does that end once it
There
converts?
will be a distributor, distribution license that'll be coming out after. I think some people can distribute directly to a dispensary. Let's say any AUCC can distribute their own whole flower product. So that gives you light processing, and that means that you can sell your flower in a jar. You can sell, keef, and you can sell it as a pre-roll. So that's a light processing that every cultivator can do. And then a processor, anything beyond that, if you're a cultivator, you have to give it to a processor for them to make your edible or, chocolate or vape cart, whatever it may be.
Okay. Okay, next. So I just wanted to highlight, this was something that I was in an OCM meeting the other day, and they brought this to everyone's attention, that when you're reading these regs, pay attention to shall versus may. Anytime they say the licensee shall, it means you must. This is something you are going to have to do once these regulations pass. If it says may, then it's optional. So I've sort of broken things out throughout the slides in that way and drawn attention to that. So just quickly, processors can acquire, process, and sell cannabis from a licensed cultivator to licensed processors or distributors. So if you are a processor and you do one portion of you do the extraction, but you're not packaging and branding, you can pass it off to somebody else who can, or you're passing off distillate to somebody who's going to infuse that into something else. So it's sort of it becomes a network of businesses here to get the products out onto the shelves. And you can process cannabis grown by a cultivator without taking ownership over that cannabis. So then you are just sort of you're processing it, but it's still, the ownership still remains in the cultivator's hands. Is that?
Yeah. So you're right. When the distributor license, we have that now, but you're right, that does become a separate license per se, which it doesn't mean you can't apply for it, as in your current role. But yes, I can purchase as a processor, I can purchase flower, products from any cultivator. I can also, like you aptly stated, let's say someone just wants to be a bakery, maybe they just want to make edibles, but so they need that distillate to mix, to make their candy or make their gummy or whatnot, then they would buy it from a licensed processor, but they have to be a licensed processor as well. They just may be a manufacturer only and not an extractor.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it says you can only enter into branding or white labeling agreements with a true party of interest or another licensee, provided that they are not prohibited by these regs.
That's right.
I'm just going to pause and say we haven't gotten too deep into TPI. It's a really complicated part of this. And, we're hoping to put a talk together strictly on TPI. True parties of interest are people who have controlling interests in your business, are investors, are partners that you're working with. And it is a really tricky conversation that I don't fully understand. And I think it takes a lot of understanding as we get into these of who you're going to partner with and who you're allowed to partner with.
That's right. And you're right. It's very complicated. I wouldn't pretend to know, all that it's entailed. All I can say is that I think I saw one of the questions, if I may, that there are some cultivators who just want to sell their product. They don't want a brand and they're not worried about it. There are other cultivators that want you to brand their product. So they will sell you their product. You'll make the product. They'll sell you their, flower or whatnot, and then you'll process it into a branded product and you'll sell it under that branded product's name, but it'll say in there manufactured by Glenna & Co., for instance. So that would be like a branding agreement. But to your point, it can only be between, at this juncture, a cultivator and a processor.
Yep. And so just to reiterate the 2-tier system that New York is setting up, a processor may only be a true party of interest in cultivation, distribution, cooperative, microbusinesses, or ROND licenses, which are registered organizations. So those are the sort of top-down, vertically integrated businesses, medical. A lot of them are the medical companies. So a processor cannot have any controlling interest in a retailer or vice versa. So that's just another, and that gets back to the TPI and where these sort of lines are. So if you're talking to somebody about being an investor in your processing facility, make sure they don't want to also invest in a retail. Okay, next, Tanya. Okay, here's the big part of it that I really wanted to talk about. All cannabis processing facilities must be in accordance with good manufacturing standards. And that's a federal program and has its own set of regulations and how manufacturing facilities have to be set up and run and what their compliance standards are. So licensees that have a processing license have to set this up. You have to show proof. You have to be audited. So I really wanted to talk about this because I've heard that it's a lot to take on and it's not cheap. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's not cheap and it's a lot to take on. I can tell you that I'm always learning something new about it. It's akin to like when you go to a restaurant, and they have those washing your hands signs. That's GMP. It says when you go to a restaurant and you see this restroom was checked or cleaned by, that's GMP. So it's really, like you aptly stated, good manufacturing processes, basically. So it's not necessarily specific to cannabis. It's specific to hygiene, cleanliness, making sure that there's nothing harmful that'll be associated in your product as it goes to a consumer. So it's very regulated. And in regards to cannabis, there's a list of auditors that you're allowed to utilize in order to achieve, a proper audit and get that certification. And it's required as part of being a processor. You must have have passed a GMP audit. And so, like I stated, I think there's like 6 or 7 the last I looked that are approved by the state. And so you just click on that link. It shows you who's approved. You set up an audit. They come, they audit you, and they tell you, any gaps. And so, for instance, it's whether it's your space is clean, you're using all stainless steel, so there's no bacteria absorbed, your cleanliness is there, your hygiene, your practices is testing, your anything and everything that's going to touch something that a consumer is going to use, or ingest, and make sure that that standard is achieved. So for those of you that were interested in making, or processing, and having an edible product, for instance, you would have to do that in a licensed facility that has a GMP certification. I've definitely talked to different people about how costly and how much time is involved in that. It's, there's compliance is just something you got to accept in cannabis. Like, it's important for health, but it's also important for, making sure that people maintain a good grade and a good output. So, there's people that are sharing, let's say you go to a restaurant and maybe they have a kitchen they're not using, or maybe there's a person that has a GMP facility that they rented out. I know of people that maybe take the 11 to 2 shift and go make their products. But either way, you have to show that you're maintaining those GMP standards, and there is a very defined list in your operating plan of, it's called a HACCP, as far as how you're going to make each product and how you're going to maintain that cleanliness, so that when you do your final lot testing before you get on a dispensary shelf, that there's a standard of no pathogens that are going to be harmful, microbials, heavy metals, that whole process. So it's no joke. You definitely want someone that knows what GMP means, and the auditors that I've used, they really know it, and they'll point out any gaps that you have for you to rectify.
Are there I have a feeling the answer to this is yes, people out there who will help you establish a GMP facility, like consultants and companies who?
Yes, there are definitely people. In fact, one of the ones that was approved recently, I reached out to and asked 1,000 questions on what are all these HACCP plans that you've done, and what are your best practices, because you want to go to someone that's been doing it. So I asked people that were GMP certified for a while, so that way I knew they had good best practices. And I asked them, what would you wish you'd have known when you were starting out? Like, what would keep your costs down? Don't try to do everything, try to keep it hyper-focused. And there's tons of, there are great consultants. There's also great packages where you can see, like, okay, I want to make this production line. I want to make edibles. So this is the HACCP plan for that particular edible. I definitely would not embark upon that without someone that knows and understands a full GMP audit.
Yeah, I think some different people that I've talked to, whether they're already conditional processors or people working towards their processing license, are sort of doing just that. Like, I'm going to start with this product, like this line of equipment, get that going, get my head wrapped around that, get some money flowing in, and then down the road, year 2, expand and add this much more equipment and sort of take it.
Exactly. A scaled approach, right? Because, people say cannabis. I'm sure you guys all know this. Everyone says cannabis, and they think, they just automatically start charging you more, like regardless of what level of the supply chain. So for me, it was really important to start small, so that we could work out our, bugs, if you will, our issues, our gaps, and not pour a lot of money into it and then have to, pivot or redo your space. So for me, how I did my GMP audit, I'm not saying this is how you should do it, but I wanted to do it very small. I did it in like a 300 square foot space, very small, built a self-enclosed kind of room, with a 4 walls and a roof. And proper ventilation, all stainless steel, triple sink. Anytime you see GMP, it means you got to have a triple sink. You got to have a wash, sanitized, and wash, rinse, and sanitize. That's just the modality of anywhere you do make a product, and a drain. So you got to make sure those basic factors are in there. But it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be huge. It's shocking. Some of the best edibles that come out of Nevada or California are in like a 400, 500 square foot space. So you don't have to go big, if you will, and start with one product line. That's your forte or passion. And like you aptly stated, Beck, just get, equipment for that. And it doesn't have to be fancy. And you could get used equipment, just make sure it's clean and, cleanable, if you will. But it's literally just means you have a sign that says you wash your hands, you wear a hairnet and wear, gown up. As I say, I tell people you got to garb up. But there's a list online of really good ideas of how you could follow those standards in a more economical way.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me feel better. It felt so daunting. And even when I was Googling it, things were coming up like, this is the most stringent, federal guidelines. And hold on a second. I have to let my kid in. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So I did see a question, if I may. I think it was Jamie, that you're having trouble identifying your grower or processor. Feel free to reach out to me. I know that there are people that, are doing their own brands. When I'm doing my own brand, but I'm also doing other New York brands and bringing them to market. So, and actually today we just got approved for our final lot and line testing to go to market. So, I'm very amenable and happy to helping people launch in this space.
I think that's the best thing right now about, this rollout of the market is the people who are sort of doing it have been really willing to share their knowledge and help the rest of us come along.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, like you stated, there's obviously the focus of this, is for you guys to compile your comments and to make it better. Right. But there's also, I think, some great aspects of it where there's space for small farmers, and it's not lost upon me that you're New York small farm and, and gearing towards people that may not have a space or a barrier to entry. And I think, in my opinion, New York is really trying to get that right and to give space to people to launch without, being a big, huge vertically integrated MSO in another state, for instance.
So do you see, like, while we're on the topic of GMP, like, do you see there being room for, there's a lot of cannabis chefs and, who do pop-ups and a cannabis outdoor event and things like that. Do you see room for that in GMP, or is that going to be difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I was curious about that too, with some of the, pop-ups, if you will. I mean, obviously as a licensee, I'm very, reticent to move anything that I do out of a licensed facility or a licensed space where I can have a little more control on making sure that it's a clean room. So my practice for me, and, again, I don't speak for anyone else, but when you come to my facilities, you have to gown up, you sign in, you have to gown up, and anything that we use is tracked and traced. We use Proteus 420 is a software system that we found to be the most economical and the most comprehensive for us to put all of our trace and track in. So anything we use, whether it's a, child resistant dew tube, or whether it's a vendor, or whether it's ethanol extraction or whatever it is, our modality, it's put in there. So we can always do track and trace. We can always show a recall, with our unique lot and batch identifier. We could perform a recall if we needed to, or we can analyze what, the best yield was or the best space was for not just us, but the farmers that we support. Because we have farmers in our realm that, we want to support them too, and support the, dispensaries. So we have a good supply chain that's sustainable and keep our margins intact, keep our costs down. But you have to maintain your records for like 5 years. There's a very stringent element to records and tracking. That's the number one thing you'll probably get dinged on if you get an audit, if you can't show track and trace. So I would lend to just be cognizant of that anything you're doing, is up to scrutiny and or potential harm if a pathogen is introduced. So.
Oops, I'm muted. Sorry. For people out there, I think there's a lot in this area, especially if you're doing it. The OCM is writing these regs, and hearing from people who are pursuing something specific, if you can submit comments on what you would need to make your business successful within these guidelines, that will really help them in the next step craft something that will work for a lot of different types of businesses. So this slide gets into extraction methods. So extraction shall only be conducted using the following methods: mechanical extraction, professional grade closed loop CO2 extraction systems, which must be food and beverage grade, ethanol or alcohol-based extraction, and volatile solvent or hydrocarbon extraction methods that, again, must have a professional grade closed loop system that recovers the solvents, and it can use butane, propane, or another pre-approved solvent, TBD. Okay.
Yeah, and so like right now, sorry,
Okay.
hydrocarbon, they'll start opening that up, in March. So like right now you can do, like you said, CO2, as long as it's closed loop, which means it's, grabbing the solvent back, or mechanical, which means even just like pressing, if you're making, resin, and then ethanol, which is a higher throughput, but you have to have that in a C1D1, or your hydrocarbon has to be in a C1D1 space. So that can be costly, but Tanya knows this because I actually met her near the extraction lab that I built a modular one, so it wasn't as expensive, and it retained that C1D1. So there's things that you can do. You'd be surprised by as far as, getting into this space.
Woo, you were the right guest tonight.
Oh.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. Tanya. Yeah, okay. So allowable product types, topicals, edibles. The shapes are a big deal. You can't do anything that will appeal to anybody under the age of 21. So it can be capsules, beverages, tablets, tinctures, baked goods, gummies, chocolates, vape cartridges or single-use pens, concentrates, obviously the flower products, and then extracts that are, being passed on to be incorporated into something else, are all allowable. You cannot make products that contain liquor, tobacco, or nicotine, and then they have limits on the THC, the max THC per serving and per package. So 10 milligrams per serving and 1,000 milligrams per package. You can't have synthetic cannabinoids, artificially derived phytocannabinoids, and anything that's potentially hazardous or addictive. Obviously, no. Let me see. You are not allowed to make anything by adding phytocannabinoids, concentrate, or extract to commercially available candies or snack food items. So you can't just mix it in there and call it a day. They said you can use it as an ingredient, mix it in, break Doritos down, I guess, mix it into something else, but you can't claim the Doritos as an ingredient. You would have to list the ingredients of the Doritos as the ingredient. So all these, packaged goods that are showing up in the unlicensed retail shops that are Rice Krispie treats or, I don't know what, Oreos or something, like branded names or close to branded names, they're really discouraging because, again, you can't step on anybody else's IP, and they don't want to appeal to anybody under 21. You also can't have injectables, an inhaler, a suppository, which would be super fun, or transdermal formulations. Okay, so there's a lot in the regs about the stability testing and making sure that things are shelf stable. And I was reading that you have to do your stability testing and then hang on to all of that as well, all of that information. So that's a big, so it's really tracking not only the parts of your products and every hand that's sort of touched it, but you also have to keep records of your stability testing and how long things have lasted, and recalls and all of that. Okay, next. Serving sizes is, they want items to be easily recognizable as what the serving is. So in solid forms, it can either be prepackaged into individual serving packages, or in a manner where it's clear easily identifiable what the serving size is. So it can be scored or marked. And then if it is liquid, it should come in a single serving. So beverages can come in a single serving can, and then you can package 6-packs. And they said if it is not individually wrapped or pre-measured, you can have a device. So a cap, a cup, a dropper, that has to be included, but hash marks on the container are not acceptable. And then your vape devices must be closed loop system with single-use cartridges or a single-use device. And this is sort of one too where I love the disposable vapes, but I do get bummed out about the trash. And so the vapes or inhaled cannabis products cannot include synthetic terpenes, polyethylene glycol, vitamin E acetate, MCT oil, medicinal compounds, or any illegal or controlled substances, artificial food coloring, benzoic acid, or diketones. So this is all, there's a lot, and there's a lot more. There's like 100 times more of this in the regs. I just picked out the ones that seem to be the most top line. So some things that I was curious about in some of the other categories, like retail, you can have up to 3 retail licenses. In micro businesses, they've said you can have 1. Is there a limit on how many licenses a processor can hold?
I mean, to your point, you can't cross that barrier, to be vertically integrated. So if you decide on retail, then you're on the retail or consumption side. You can't be on the cultivator or processor side. Obviously with micro, you can do, obviously you're a little vertically integrated there, but you can cultivate and you can process, but under the conditional program, you had to have been eligible for that, if you will. But you can have multiple locations. I don't think people necessarily realize that. So a processor can have multiple locations. So you might have, your own small, like for me, I have a small lab that when I built, so I made that my whole flower, my pre-roll. So I separate my, processing as far as products from my whole flower. So I create a quarantine too, which also helps. But you can have another location. Let's say you work out something with, they have a chocolate factory or something, and you pass all the regs and the rules and you get your GMP, and you can show that you have the proper processes to retain and control that environment so that there won't be any diversion. You could license that with it's called a location form. So you could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think about, a new license. Yeah. If you were going to do a a new type of license, you have to do a new separate application. Yep.
But there's not limits on how many locations you could have.
Not that I saw. I mean, again, I probably defer to my attorney who knows a lot more of that. But as far as I saw, that no, as long as you follow the regulations and that the rules of your operating plan, which include your HACCP plan, your product and safety plan, as long as all that transfers to the other location, I didn't see any impediment to that. No.
So what, I'm just curious, aside from the sort of the regulations and the licensing process, like now that, you're doing this, you've kind of been set up, like, what do you think the hardest part has been for you learning wise?
I would say the magnitude of the paperwork and compliance and, just, obviously this is probably a one-off because, the regulations were changing. I mean, I'm an adjunct professor of regulations at cannabis cultivation at Finger Lakes and teaching the course of something that changes, weekly, where you got to go online and make sure the latest regs or FAQs, which I know it's an emerging, and I appreciate that, the magnitude of what they've had to accomplish. I really do. But I think just, making sure you don't miss something and that you're very critical of your, operations. Like, does it make sense? Is it, safe for your employees? Is it safe for your output? Just those basic tenets, and that you keep it small. I see people go out and, maybe, I'm not saying not do this or do it, but for us, it was like, keep it small. Let's learn small so that we don't overspend or we don't screw up too bad if we do screw up. And also on this other hand, though, don't be afraid to try stuff or get in the space. Like, no one's left behind. I hear this all the time that people are getting left behind. I'm like, not at all. It's just emerging, So if you want to be a chef, or if you want to make that really cool edible, or if you just want to make vape, like whatever it is, like just find people that'll support it, people that'll help you with the supply and won't be too parasitic, and that you can have a good win-win, all transparency, and just try not to spend too much money running out and renting a place that you don't know is going to be approved or support that endeavor. That's all.
Yep. And there's a lot to be said too for, I think, we sort of tuned into this a while ago, but you can just be a brand.
Yeah.
You can develop recipes and develop your products and be a brand, and then work with a processor to create that and package that for you so that you can focus on the creating, and not get, if paperwork and compliance isn't your thing and you really thrive on making things in your kitchen and figuring it out, you can still do that and then hand it over. I will say that
to me, yeah, you can hand it to Glenn & Co. So I love that you said that. So I realized that this was something new to me, that if you look at, my first product I brought from a small woman farmer, intentionally, and they don't have the capability to dry and cure, package everything in large. So we're going to do that for them because we have a larger farm, but they still get the money from that. They still get the brand from that. We just share, that revenue. So there's different models that you can do, and you can also exchange things, or, I have someone who does one pain point, one of my growers, my husband works a farm, my sons, and one of the guys that have grown hemp with me for years, but one's a licensed, electrician, so we, now we're bringing his brand to market, and he works with his own legacy brand. So there's things that you can do to keep your costs down. But yeah, we do that. We have brands, small farmers that we're bringing to market that don't have the overhead or support that we do to bring it to market. I think it's a great model.
And it can be for now, like, you can do that. You can work with the processor, get your thing going, and then learn and expand and build.
Yeah. And there's other processors. Like I have discussions with other processors, how we can maybe make higher end extracts better, and they make beverages, or, there's opportunities that you can, if you want to collaborate on a brand opportunity to make different pain points, you can do that too.
Yeah. And I think everybody should realize that there's a lot of people out there like you that are doing it, and they can call and they can ask questions.
Exactly.
And if they want to make beverages and you're not the beverage person, like
Exactly.
you can point them in the right direction.
Yeah. And there's things you can do. Like if maybe you have a small kitchen and you want to make just your edible, but let's say maybe you do want to make a beverage. There's canning companies or canneries that can come through and they have GMP. They can come to you, make that product for you with you, as long as it follows and it passes final lot and line testing. And you can, you don't have to buy that equipment. If you're only going to make your beverage 3 times a year, it's almost like you're, renting it out for that week.
Mm-hmm. So this is the last slide I had. If anybody out there has questions, or if anybody on my panel has questions, or if you sort of have anything that you want to talk about, we're open for that. You're muted, Tanya.
Okay, I have a question. If someone did not, it was mentioned a couple of times, if someone did not want to per se get a processing license, but is a brand and wanted to partner with a processor to create their product, does the brand need to be a processor?
No. So let's say you have the brand Tanya, or Canadiva, and you want to bring that to a dispensary. You go through a processor, like myself. So it's your creative, your ideas, right? And it's your label, it's your packaging. But let's say we do that all for you, almost like we're Procter and Gamble. Maybe you're a great value for Walmart. Maybe you're a Tide. Maybe you're, a Tide Pod or whatever it is. And our name, Glenna & Co., is in the manufactured by. So your name and your face and your packaging and your ideation is the brand. And then we negotiate, or we bring that to a dispensary and say, hey, we'd like to put the Tanya brand in your dispensary, and we manufacture it. We make sure it passes everything, final lot and line testing. And so, yeah, people can do that.
And there's obviously a relationship, an agreement between the brand and the processor, and that's how everyone gets paid.
Yes, correct? It's very clear. It's clear math. This is what it was sold for. This is what the dispensary bought. You reverse engineer it, right? The dispensary is going to buy it for $10. I'm going to sell it to the dispensary for $5. I subtract $1 for testing, $1 for packaging, and then you and I split the, $3 for instance.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, cool. There's Annette, before I bring up the question in the chat, did you have a question?
I thank you for breaking it down, you guys. I think that was awesome detail. And I think what you showed was like all the possibilities of the matrix of doing business. So that's really cool. One of the questions that I have is kind of about compliance, right? Like there's so much mass out there. And, I think folks always think about like, what about quality control with a processor? If I bring you like my top notch stuff, I want to guarantee that every single piece of my top-notch stuff gets into my batch, and my product. So, like, what are the guidelines that you have for yourselves? How do you make those agreements with folks? Just some things that I've heard out there, some questions.
Yeah, so like your SOPs. So the brand would want to know, what's your product and safety and quality plan? And to your point, how do you know batch 1? Lot 1, batch 1 is the same as batch 10, lot 10. And the state has taken, in my opinion, even though people may lament on the lab testing, they want to make sure that that's the case. So every time you bring a unit to market, it's done in units. So let's say you're going to bring 20,000 pre-rolls. You have to submit a proportionate amount of those pre-rolls to final lot and line state lab testing, so that they know that batch follows the same standard and safety. And you would keep that record, so you could clearly see if there's a degradation in one of your SOPs, or maybe you're having an issue with a certain cultivar, or a certain product, raw material. that you purchase, it's broken down. It's a very clear. So for us, we take that really seriously. So we run full R&D panels on everything before we even move forward to making that product.
So we got a bunch of questions.
I just have one more,
Ooh.
because if there's anything that you want folks to comment on, because you're doing this process now, anything that stands out to you in these comments, in these regulations that you're like, this is inhibitive, or this could really hurt a small processor, what would you shout out there?
I mean, I will say, Beck, like what you put together just kind of nailed in my opinion, there's so many pages to even the frequently asked questions has how many pages, right? And the terms and conditions, which don't underestimate the terms and conditions, because it goes right back to what you say, you shall do that. I think for me, if I could give advice, it'd be make sure you do these kind of webinars and take notes, reach out to people that are doing it, and just ask them really poignant questions. But I think the lab testing was the hardest for me, and that's just my personal. So I was like, all right, let's just stop. Let's not go to market yet until we get this. And so every single one of us stopped and took a week of training on Proteus 420 to make sure we understood trace and track, and make sure that we understood the labs. I called each lab, what do you guys test? What's a good test? What's a bad test? I analyzed the state allotment of what was allowed in recreational versus medical, like all that. And then I asked a chemist, a scientist, because I thought about that. I'm like, I've never asked for a COA when I've gone to a winery, so I've never thought about that. So all the, anything about molds, let me tell you, I've learned a lot about what's a good mold and what's not, or what's a good, pathogen acceptable and what isn't. But I think just finding people that know that and asking. I call the labs and ask them, they're experts. I look at everyone's labs. And, we decided to make it very stringent for us so that we wouldn't have trouble down the road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Okay.
And we don't know it all. We learn every day.
So I want to stay with the time because I know we have another guest at 8. I'm applying for dispensary. That's going to come up in the next segment. But to answer, can I white label? As in, can I put my company's name on the products that I'm selling? I don't think that you can, right?
No, you can't white label yet. But I think there was a question about manufactured for. You can, but not as a dispensary. They don't allow you to white label. Is my understanding. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And we will definitely.
We could theoretically make products that are, maybe they're sold in your store. I don't know all the rules and laws about that, but. Maybe something that's not sold, just like if something's sold at a Costco versus Wegmans or whatnot, maybe that's it, but it can't be. And then there's a very defined wall between, a dispensary's, retail and selling and consumption versus manufactured for.
So does anyone have any insight on how one could provide white labeling as far as GMP? Do you want any clarification around that? Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, if you're a processor, you can provide white labeling for, like a brand or a cultivator. Like you can, they don't necessarily, like for instance, Glen & Co. makes Betty's, product. They don't know that it's Glen & Co. When they're looking at the label, it says Betty's. It's all about Betty. But maybe, like you said, there's one line that says manufactured for Betty by Glen & Co. or manufactured by. I'll have to ask Rachel. She's the one, the expert on the labeling requirements. There's a whole packet on those too. But yeah, we have our own brand, Glenna's Gardens, but everything else is, a lot of the other brands are for other people.
Same one. Do they have to be included in your business plan before you get GMP?
Not necessarily. I mean, you have to say where you're going to get your product from and things. It's got to be from a license. If it's cannabis, you got to say that you're going to get your products from a licensed cultivator. But no, you just have to denote your raw materials and where you're getting them.
And a big part of, I think the licensing applications will be letters of intent. That you've sort of talked to other partners in the supply chain and you have sort of a working agreement, like, yeah, we're going to be willing to work with this distributor. and this cultivator, we've talked and we're sort of down with them. So that's a big part is meeting people in this time, getting to know who's out there in the supply chain and building relationships so that you can move forward with your license application with partners.
We've given LOIs for dispensaries to show that we'll provide them, product. And we've also, shown for AUCC that we'll take in their product. So that's a great point, Beck.
So as far as TPI, I called a friend. We're going to do a TPI like deep dive. It's not going to be like a live thing, but we're going to pre-record it and I'll share it with everybody and we'll upload it. So we'll have it. When the questions came in, I don't know what we were talking about. So if that makes sense, we can address it. If not, I can move on, but we will be doing a TPI deep dive. Next one was, has New York State picked a digital track and trace system?
Yes, they BioTrack. And so the medical, the ROs use BioTrack too. Other states use Metric too. They're both pretty comparable, but yeah, it's my understanding that whatever trace and track you use, you have your own that, the auditors will come in and say, how do you know what you have and where it is? But it's got to, you got to make sure that you provide track and trace and BioTrack.
Okay, cool. Would a cultivator also need to follow GMP as far as running facilities day to day?
You don't have to be GMP certified, but you have to follow some of the same kind of, hygiene aspects of it. They'll come in and look and as your AUCC, as your cultivator inspection, they'll come in and look and make sure you're following good practices. You have hand washing sinks and things like that. Eye wash stations is a big one. You got to have farm safety too. So you can get a lot of good insight from farm safety, but really most people's standard GMP is, pretty basic. Like, hey, be safe, be clean, and be hygienic is a good premise.
As far as someone asked if they missed some parts, we are going to again upload them to all of our respective YouTube channels. So if you did miss it, there will be the replay. I'm just scrolling down. Some of them are confirming, like, thank you. Here's another one. Do you need to get recertified for GMP each time you add a new white label?
No, not that I'm aware of. No, you have your GMP certification that's separate and distinct. You just have to follow whatever the term of that is, right, for recertification. But no, you have your, you just have to show you have product quality safety standards for any line that you have.
Cool. And then the last one is, can an analytical lab hold multiple licenses like cultivar processor?
I'm not sure. I defer that one.
Yeah,
I think they can have multiple locations too, right? Can't they? They just have to be certified to do certain, like, not all labs can run all tests. Like some actually, I know there's a lab in Buffalo that works with a lab in Rochester, whichever, component they can't run, the other lab runs it. So maybe you could run heavy metals and they can run pesticides, or they can run microbials, and, so I'm not sure.
And no, there was one more that came in. What happens to a product that doesn't pass? Is it destroyed? Are there other uses for a product that doesn't make the cut?
There's it depends what it fails for. So like if it fails for heavy metals and pesticides, yeah, you do. There's nothing I'm aware of right now that can remediate that. But if it failed for like aspergillus, let's say, or molds, yeah, there are extraction methods that can remediate that, as well as rad machines that can remediate that. So that's definitely an issue. Oh, Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey. Yes, there's
Jeffrey's from Rochester.
I'm actually buying I'm working on buying a used one, but a product that can mitigate some molds and microbials, because that's a serious issue in New York. But you can remediate that. So certain extraction techniques can remediate that, make it 100% safe, and then you retest it and make sure it's it's good for consumption.
Awesome.
Safe as flour or safe for extraction?
Yeah, you won't. This one, I would extract it.
Yeah.
You know, for
Okay.
us.
I just want to make sure you clarify that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're right.
All right, so that was our last question, and it's a little after 8. I see that Naomi's back there. She doesn't have a camera on yet, so there she is. She just popped on. Glenna, are you staying on for the next segment?
It's up to you. I mean, I'll go on mute and defer because I certainly don't know the retail side. So I appreciate the opportunity. It was really nice to talk to everyone. And
Yeah, if you want to hang out backstage, you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
And
Hop into the green room.
go into the green room. Yes, absolutely. All right,
Thank you,
I am
guys.
gonna pop off. Annette,
Thank
are you
you.
popping off? Are you gonna?
I'd
No,
like to stay
me.
on. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Let me
guys.
get me out.
Okay. So that was processing, and we're now going to move over to retail licensing. And so I have Naomi from Noob NYC. She is an approved card licensee, and we're really excited to have her because she's sort of, in the trenches with this, and we just the card portion of the licensing and this whole industry is exciting for all of us. So we're really, really happy for you, Naomi, and we're happy to have you here. So thank you. Can you introduce yourself and just give us a little more information about your story and what you're doing?
Sure. Hi, everyone tuning in. I want to say thank you for the invitation to speak and share a little bit about what is going on. So my name is Naomi Guerrero, and I am part of the Nube NYC team. And the team consists of my father, my brother, and myself. And we are, as was mentioned before, we are in the process of sort of, definitely in the trenches, I guess, and kind of on the plane as the plane is being built and flown. And our story is pretty much, I think, I would say a typical New York outer borough story. I'm from the Bronx. My family's from the Bronx and Harlem. And like I said before, my brother and my father are the justice impacted sort of individuals, and myself, we're all in the same family. So if it counts that way, and we won a license because now there's 2 groups. And so we won in the first November round. And we are another legacy to legal story.
It's amazing. It's really, really exciting. So let's jump into retail. Again, sort of the way the processing went, I just took notes on, top lines and things that stood out to me. And Naomi and I were talking about it a little bit. There are, for the card licensees, because these stores are opening and these regulations haven't been approved yet, the state has issued guidelines for the stores that are opening now. So they sort of are in line with the regulations that are being worked on, but they're sort of like, for now, this is how we want you to operate. So I had noticed like a few things that might have been stated in the card guidelines that aren't phrased the same in retail, and I wish I could have pulled side by side. I just didn't have enough time. But as we go, if there's anything that you sort of spot, we can call it out and we can discuss it. I just pulled some definitions. The front of the regulations has a really extensive definition section. Just some things that I grabbed for this: the difference between cannabis merchandise and cannabis paraphernalia. Merchandise are non-plant touching branded items, clothing, hats, pens, keychains, mugs, anything that would have the brand on it. And then, or accessories. And then cannabis paraphernalia is equipment or material that is used to consume or vaporize or ingest cannabis product into the body. And then also considered paraphernalia are storage containers or lock boxes or something like that. Another thing that comes up later on is a community facility. This is sort of an expansion on the idea of schools. So originally, the retailers had to stay 500 feet from a school. So they've brought in this definition a little bit for municipalities to decide on. So a community facility is a place that provides daycare services to children, a park, a playground, a public swimming pool, library, or facility where the primary purpose is recreational activities or opportunities to serve children or adolescents. And then controlling interests. So there are two, this sort of gets into the TPI thing. There are two different things. There's a controlling interest and a passive investor. A controlling interest is an investor or a partner who has the authority within the business, within the retail business, to order management changes, operational decisions, and policies, such as the ability to approve operating budgets, amend corporate operating documents, policies, or procedures. They can hire or dismiss personnel. They can make changes from the top of the organization down, approve contracts, and control any assets, or they can actually dissolve the organization. So that's a controlling interest. If you jump down, the passive investor is a person who has an interest in the company, but it's on a much smaller scale. So it's no more than 5% of the shares of a publicly traded company, or in a smaller company that isn't publicly traded, it has to be under 20% of the shares of that license. So that's a person who's invested but does not have control. An employee in charge is basically a manager, an individual 21 plus who is at the management level of a dispensary and can perform tasks, oversee operations of the day, and oversee staff. Financial interest is any sort of future right to ownership, investment, or compensation arrangement, directly or indirectly, greater than 10% of revenue, 50% of net profit, or $100,000. House of worship is going to come into play later. So they are defining, because especially in places like New York City, there's a lot of houses of worship all over the place. And it makes it difficult to locate a retail facility. So they're defining house of worship as a whole building owned or leased by a religious corporation, which is used by members exclusively as a meeting place for worship or other religious observance. So if it is used for any other function, except for something that pertains to the church or the worship services. And then school grounds. This is another expansion of the definition of the school. So it's the school grounds. It's like the property lines of the school. It's not door to door anymore. So that will, once we get into the distance retailers have to be located from these things, you'll see that come up. Okay, next. Fees, again, I'll point out, shall equals must and may equals optional. So as you're reading the regulations, pay attention to that. Application fees for retail are $1,000 non-refundable. And then the retail license, once you're approved, is $7,000. As Annette talked about the other day, for social and economic equity applicants, if you prove a financial need, you can get your fees reduced, or in some cases maybe waived. I think, there could be a case for waiving fees or reducing fees for social equity applicants from an impacted area, period. Like I think there's something to be said for that without having to show economic need, I think you've undergone the stress and the damage. So maybe letting people go without $1,000 application fee would be a sign of good faith. So retail dispensaries may sell seedlings, seeds, and immature cannabis plants that they can acquire from a nursery. So this is a great opportunity. So and this only goes into effect once home grow begins. So once home grow starts, you can start getting these products from a nursery and selling them to consumers. You can sell and deliver cannabis products and cannabis paraphernalia. You may operate an adjoining premises for the consumption of adult use cannabis products sold by the dispensary with the prior approval of the OCM. So that's also very exciting. So there is on-site consumption. That, Mike, that's not for micro retail, but I would say that's something that should be commented on for micro businesses. So these regulations that I'm going over are just for the regular retail. The micro businesses are a whole separate set, and we're going over those on Tuesday, I believe.
And consumption is integrated into the micro business. It's just not I don't think it's in the same way side by side as retail. Adjoining premises is exciting.
Yeah, because it's a little bit undefined, and I have a feeling that might get hashed out a little bit more. There's also no guidance on what can be sold, because the consumption regulations are not out yet. So there's no sort of definition on what a consumption lounge sells differs from what a retailer sells. So I have a feeling that will sort of get defined as these licenses or these regs go.
One thing to call out here, Beck, that's cool too, is just the way that these regs are written is a nod to like the tiering system and interacting with nursery licenses. So giving opportunities B2B, I think is really good too. Yeah. Going back to Glenna's point about like everybody getting a piece of the pie.
Yeah. And so nursery, microbusiness, and cultivation will be in our next session on Tuesday. Retail dispensaries must be brick and mortar stores selling in person, over the internet, or via app. And they can have drive-through and pre-order pickup lines with pre-approval. I think the pickup lines is not the part that needs approval. It's the drive-through window. And probably in the city, maybe you can have one of those like pickup windows, but it doesn't really say. Okay. Retail dispensaries cannot have names that describe the products for sale. So, you cannot have names for your business or describe products for sale using the words drugs, medicine, drugstores, apothecary, pharmacies, or similar terms or combination of terms. And so that I do know some people that's unfortunate, like they'll have to change names. But really getting at not confusing this with the medical dispensaries, and also not claiming medical benefits for this product. You can't display products that are visible from the exterior of the store. You cannot dispense products from vending machines, either inside or outside the store. You cannot give away cannabis samples. You cannot engage in processing, manufacturing, or compounding. You cannot sell, deliver, or give cannabis to a consumer, which will cause them harm or be in violation of the possession limits. And you also cannot sell food, beverage, or personal care items that is not a cannabis product. And I think there are some other items that sort of get at this no giving away cannabis samples. Like you really can't give away anything. You can't have customer loyalty programs. I get it, but in the liquor industry, they're constantly,
they're like handing out
they're giving away, like they're pre-packaging the products wine together. They're like sampling wine. They're sampling liquor.
You can't have like coupons or any type of like discounts or anything.
I mean,
at least on the card side.
I
I'm
think
guessing that's
even
for
on this side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no real like promotions.
Mhm.
And if we can go to the next.
I mean, I think that's something that deserves commentary for folks. I mean, like, in New York, think of it, a retailer in New York that doesn't do some kind of discounting, loyalty pro. I mean, like, you name it, there's client relationship marketing that needs to be done. And so I think that's like far reaching. Even if you go into dispensaries in Massachusetts, they have like buy one, get ones. Like,
Yeah, I was
I
gonna say
have
even in
pre-rolls
other
on a
states.
discount, like 3 for something, like a BOGO. I think
Yeah,
that's
or like a loyalty card, like you're come into time.
I wonder what the logic behind removing sort of discounts or kind of promotional, like what does that prevent or stop?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it could be inhibitive to business. Just think about if you have like pounds and pounds of something that your your customers don't like, you might have to start discounting that product. So like as a shopkeeper, you need to have the flexibility to manage your inventory. And I think that would be infringing on your inventory management process.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question just popped up. I think it was from Carla about that she was considering making non-infused making non-infused edibles for free tastes. I think that is allowed. So I think say you're selling this kind of edible that is infused, if you had the non-infused one so that people could taste what the actual gummy tastes like, that is allowed. But you can't give away anything that has a cannabis product in it or is infused in any way. You can't sell nicotine or alcohol, so the consumption spaces will not be able to serve alcohol and cannabis. You cannot make recommendations to consumers who have identified themselves as a medical patient with a per pharmacist consultation certification. So if they walked in and showed you their medical card and started asking for advice, you can't really consult with them. You obviously can sell to them, but you can't sort of advise in any capacity. And you can't sell, offer for sale, or keep cannabis products with the intent to sell in any vehicle, cart, truck, wagon, van, truck, or trailer. So it really has to be inside the store.
Shout out to all the people that tried to be entrepreneurial.
Shout out to Weed World.
That did, they executed. So that's good.
Mm-hmm. It's funny when you can kind of see who they wrote the regulation for.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, wait, let's squeeze this one in. We hadn't thought of that.
Let's cover these folks.
You can sell on your own website. You can't market or sell products through a third-party website, and you can't fulfill orders through a third-party website.
But you can, from what I understand, for example, like Leafly, like they can have you in their website, in their sort of directory, but obviously purchases won't be able to be made through the site, but they can they can show what you sell and have you in that sort of directory, but it'll just, when you click the dispensary, the link will take you over to the website for Nubit, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this one down here in green, this came from it's in the card guidelines, but it's also I believe it's in the marketing, branding, and advertising guidelines. You cannot have a house brand of cannabis product or enter into a branding agreement with a cultivator or processor. This one is a big one. I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and I mean, I've heard people say they think this is great because retailers can then push their own products. Somebody told me that they were in a Massachusetts dispensary, and the bud tender was selling somebody on a product that was not at all, she wanted something to help her sleep, and they were pushing her on like a high THC content, and turned out it was the house brand. So it can cloud judgment. But I feel like, and also it can become, retailers could fill their shelves with their own brands, but I feel like there might be a way to do this where they could set a limit on how much shelf space can be dedicated to a house brand.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's type whack, because it's like, if it's not good and it doesn't sell, people are not going to buy it, regardless of whether, at the end of the day, you're going to fill your dispensary with what you're going to look at what's selling, and that's where you're going to go. I just think that that's a missed sort of opportunity, in the sense, especially for like legacy to legal folks, because if you already have a sort of, not just a brand, but a history and a story that you want to tell, and you want to combine that with actual like product, then but I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it so that the product dictates what's on the shelves and remove bias, but I don't think that necessarily completely does that. I don't know, my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we were at that OCM meeting uptown last week, they pointed this out, and they said that they have been getting a lot of feedback on this, and they asked for people to comment on this one. So
I think
either way, one way or another, I think
there's an opportunity to think about this, because I think there is some disappointment to, you want to, as a shopkeeper, be able to feature like what you're repping, where you're from, like what, if for example, like I own a retail dispensary and I'm like, traditionally a haze cultivator, right? I want to be able to present this firehouse haze strain. That's kind of cutting into like the craft and the culture and the connoisseurship that we love and appreciate. So, but I do understand the whole conflict of interest, the competing, the being on too many, you got your hands in too many pots because you're working with like processors, cultivators. So, maybe there's a way to do it like cross shelves. I don't know. Like maybe there's a way to dictate percentages. They're dictating percentages on, 40% will have to be non-ROND, right? Non-ROND, but only for 5 years, which that doesn't seem like a long enough time, nor does it seem like a low enough percentage. I think we need a higher percentage of New York-based brands. Like the RON might have to be like 30 for 6.
That might be forever.
Yeah, and that might need to be forever, because like they got their own shelf space and their own stuff to, so like.
Yeah, I have that one in
discussion. Big discussion.
But to me, I think to Naomi's point, like for legacy brands, they've really sort of built a following and built a brand and built a reputation on their products. And, I think there are a lot of other industries and a lot of other segments in retail where this happens, and they've managed to do it. Like Target sells their own products.
I was just thinking of Target.
Sell every other brand, and let the consumer decide.
Like it's nothing. Let's not reinvent the wheel here. Like
exactly. It's just shelf space. Like it's how you map out your shelf space. Like people got to pay to be on the shelves too. Like they got to sustain their businesses to be on the shelves.
Yeah. All right, Tanya, next.
We're passionate about that one.
Okay, so some of these are, I put the numbers in.
Passive investor.
Yeah, so no one other than a passive investor may be a true party in more than 3 retail dispensary licenses. This one was unclear for a long time for me, because I was in conversations and in meetings where people from the OCM and other people were saying with retail, you can have up to 3 locations. And I've asked a few times, like, can you have 3 locations or can you have 3 licenses? You can have 3 licenses. Those are 3 different licenses. You have to apply 3 different times. Those are not 3 different locations.
You can have, okay, so this was also very confusing. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but my
Yeah.
own team was like, we were like arguing with each other, like, no, it means this, it means that. But it's because there was a lot of like mixed messaging and misinformation from people who even like you would be like, okay, they know what they're talking about, but literally directly. And I have it in writing because I needed it in writing. But one license, one location, one license, one location, one license, one location. If you get awarded 3 licenses, then each location, different locations can't share a license in the end, but someone can have interest in up to 3. At least that's for the card, but I'm seeing that that's also for retail as well, because they don't want chains and big whatever. They want
I'm glad that you have that in writing, because that was a big thing. Like from different people, I was hearing different things, but they would say like, yeah, 3 locations.
Yeah. No, I know, because there were people who would answer. Even on the phone, I got different answers to the question. And so I was like, I need it in writing just so that it's clear. And then the message went up to who it needed to, and it was answered directly, like, no, one license, different locations cannot share a license. This is more towards like the TPI situation. Like I have one license under card. I can only be a TPI on 2 other licenses, and I would have to apply for those licenses. Or if I applied for more than one license in the card round, then I could only win or get awarded 2 more.
And a retail dispensary or any of its TPIs may also be a TPI in delivery. I have seen, I'm not sure if I pulled it out, but that a retail dispensary TPI cannot be a TPI in consumption. But I don't think I pulled that here.
Say that again.
That if you are a true party of interest in a retail license, you cannot be a TPI, a true party of interest in in a consumption license.
In a separate consumption license.
In a separate. You can have your consumption space attached to your retail license, but in a separate consumption license, no.
Meaning you can, because it's the same idea of like that being in a vertically integrated ecosystem. That's why they don't you don't want folks forming vertical.
And I think they're like, we gave you your consumption space.
Yes.
But the retail license comes with a consumption license.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So if you have your retail license and you have a consumption space attached, you can't then go and partner up with somebody who's just going for a straight up consumption license, is what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of redundant, because why would you?
Yeah, I don't know why you would need to.
But okay.
You might maybe you don't open your adjoining space. Maybe you don't have that adjoining space. Maybe you have like a different kind of retail dispensary, and then you think you could get it on somebody else's license for consumption. You can't do that.
No retail dispensary or its true parties of interest can hold direct or indirect interest or be a passive investor, landlord, financier, or management services provider to a cultivator, processor, distributor, co-op, lab, microbusiness, RO, both in and outside of New York State. This is huge.
Huge.
So take this one seriously when you're talking with your potential investors and team members. I think this also crosses over to board of directors. So if you have a board of directors for your retail business, seems to me it would benefit you to have someone in one of these other sectors on your board of directors, but that is not allowed. Basically, anybody who may be able to take over your business cannot be in those other categories.
While we're on that part, just putting this out there, I think this is I find this part extreme and actually like a hindrance to learning, collaborating with folks, to raising capital, to A lot, I get that this was put in place to sort of protect and avoid sort of vertical integration. But anyone taking over your business can happen from any business, actually.
Yeah.
Any, you know, it doesn't have to be, the person doesn't have to be in cannabis to be able to take over your business. That happens all the time. Anyways, my point is that I think that there's an oversight here, especially for specifically for card applicants, in the sense that this is a huge sort of it makes it impossible to collaborate with other social equity applicants and people in different states, which is something that is not really talked about. Everyone's assuming, oh yeah, MSOs, da 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 da. But this also leaves like Black and Brown licensees and social equity licensees in other states that are also that have similar interests. It cuts out any sort of like, it goes in deeper in the actual like full regs, but like you can't even hire them. You can't there's I don't know about like consulting or anything like that, but I think that there are resources that we could share. And it's not like the other option isn't just sort of MSOs or bust. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think that has to be said, where it's like, if it's a social equity applicant that has one license in another place, like, why can't they collaborate with a social equity applicant in New York? And I think this is too large of like a brushstroke to be like, absolutely not. No one that has a license in the other side of the industry anywhere in the world can collaborate. I don't know.
But you know, yeah, Naomi, you're bringing up such an amazing point, because what you made me think about is so many legacy folks left New York State once this was legalized in other states, because this was the thing they were had the subject matter expertise for. They were curious. They were like, oh my God, I gotta go do this somewhere else now. And so we have a lot of intellectual property that was displaced because of the prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
And that intellectual property, we know like what a lot of them look like, who they are, where they came from. And so you're right, it does seem prohibitive to the people that it's meant to protect, right? Because the protection is against MSOs, is against predatory behavior, is against folks that want to come in and like bring all their, California capital here. But I don't think that that's helping the cause for social equity applicants. To your point, maybe a good comment for us to, say like, is there a way that we could talk through this social equity wise, or, like some other criteria, percentage thresholds could be another way to look at this. Like if it's 5%.
I think in some instances there are percentage guidelines.
Yeah.
Even just reading this one, because it's like passive investor. So even somebody who's just a very small investor or happens to hold stock in a big, like a tiny percentage of stock in a big company. And then when you look at the list, it's like they can't be in any other sector. So it puts retail on like an island by itself.
Yeah.
So you're really forced to looking outside of the cannabis industry for your money.
So what
for your partners.
Right. And so what we end up having to do is educate. There becomes a huge part in sort of educating possible investors on what does it mean to invest in the cannabis industry. And when you also put into context our sort of banking restrictions and our inability to have loans and all of the other things because it's cannabis, right? It really puts, like you said, retail on an island. We have to do double the work and have set realistic expectations with interested investors that have no idea and think cannabis is like 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna get rich tomorrow. And it's not. It's a long haul. It's a marathon, baby. It's not a sprint, especially in New York. And so, like it's really something that I understand the intention, but I do think it needs to be sort of, it needs to be complicated a little bit more. And if you're going to go there, then really go there. Like give us,
dig deep,
like dig deep, get, because it's not so binary, right? It's a more complex issue as more states get licenses and the market gets larger and all of these things.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Let's bifurcate that process. That's a word a lot of people like to use. We got to bifurcate the process.
Yeah.
Like, cut it up.
Some of these are, so going back to the definitions, you have an employee in charge. Your manager cannot be managing more than one dispensary at the same time. So this one was weird. Retail dispensary shall have a premises that measures not less than the minimum square footage as determined by the office. That's all it said. So they have in their head or are leaving space to at some point determine how big a dispensary has to be, but not really saying. So I felt like this one was another thing that needed to be commented on. Like, I talked to somebody and they said that the most successful dispensary in Massachusetts is like 400 square feet. People line up outside, but they are like cranking. So, I think a lot of these, I do worry for like these, the card dispensaries. Dasney has in their mind that they have to be 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. And then, in a mature market, that's a lot of real estate to hold. So I think you need to give people the flexibility to build the size business that's appropriate for them. Dispensaries can only offer for sale cannabis products, paraphernalia, branded merchandise of the licensee. So this means any of that merchandise, so keychains, t-shirts, cups, saucers, whatever it is, can only be the store brand, cannot be other brands.
But this is not what's happening right now, though. So this is a weird reg because we saw already in Housing Works that they had like House of Puff, like, so that's not another licensee. So this goes back to this whole shelf space question, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, what if we wanted to do a collab, like, House of this times House of this, like,
or even
for merchandise,
like the sweatshirt you have on right now, like, why couldn't a retailer sell that in their store?
Yeah.
And we can't really collaborate with like other brands, and it has to be like, I guess you could say this is a collaboration with whatever, but this is essentially like a Nube shirt. I don't know, but it is really
merchandise.
I don't like that. It is really limiting. It doesn't make any sense, and it's also, I think, another thing like where I'm just like, do these regulators understand cannabis culture? Like the culture of cannabis, you know what I'm saying? That it's a lot about, it's a lot about the sort of like different brands and designs and styles, and it's a lifestyle and a culture that is attached to, and I don't know, to just push your own retail everything seems, I don't know, that seems excessive. Like,
and they've talked a lot about, if you talk to people from the control board or from the OCM, or a lot of people talk about the retail experiences and the consumption experiences that are going to come out of New York, like that we can create things that are very creative, and with rules like this, it's just limiting and hindering that creativity and that sort of experience that we can develop beyond just a place to come in and buy weed. So this one at the bottom, so you have to offer for sale boxes to lock and store your cannabis that is child tamper proof. But then, so the one at the bottom must dedicate a minimum of 40% shelf space available for non-RODs for a period of 5 years. So this goes back to that whole, they've carved out, a number on shelf space. So to create space for smaller brands. So it can be done in the example of house brands, like we could carve out shelf space for house brands. So there's definitely room to talk about or comment on that 40%, that 5 years, to push back a little bit more.
And I wonder if that 5 years started already, because like the 3 year for medical to go recreational has started.
Yeah, I don't know when that 5 years starts.
I think the clock started when the first
I think so too.
store opened.
So delivery services for retailers. Retailers must have a written delivery service plan. These are a lot more in depth. I, obviously shorten these, but they must be limited to ground transportation. They may include delivery of cannabis products, paraphernalia, or merchandise for sale at the store. Delivery drivers may not first purchase products and then receive reimbursement from the consumer. There's a lot of regulations written out about the process of IDing customers and not, delivering to your, the delivery person is responsible for the ID and all of that. You cannot have more than 25 employees providing full-time or the equivalent of 25 full-time employees delivering services to cannabis consumers per week. So you can have a pretty large delivery service. And municipalities cannot restrict delivery to a jurisdiction beyond the dispensary hours. So I think it's coming up on the next slide. There are delivery hours defined in this, but municipalities have the ability to shorten those there are operating hours. Municipalities can shorten those hours, but they cannot restrict delivery hours beyond more than what's written in the regs. Oh, I think I missed slides. But so, because I did have things about the hours of operation and the distance. I don't know where that went.
Yeah.
Okay, so the hours of operation that are listed in here, retail dispensaries have to close from 2 a.m. until 8 a.m. So they can open at 8 a.m. in the morning and they can stay open until 2 a.m. That's how the state is setting it out. But again, municipalities can say, no, you can only be open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. or something like that. They cannot restrict your hours of operation to less than 70 hours per week. For consumption spaces, the attached consumption spaces, you have to be closed from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. And again, the municipalities have the ability to alter those. And so that's what that delivery comment was about. There are people who are applying for retail license who have talked about wanting the ability to deliver 24 hours a day or have, walk-up windows 24 hours a day that people should be allowed to get cannabis whenever they need it. So that's something I know some people are commenting on. And, it would be great if retailers can deliver. Maybe you can open the delivery to 24 hours a day if the stores are closed. And then,
yeah,
go ahead.
Just to chime in, at least for the, again, this is like the card. I don't know what will happen with the regular, but I'm guessing it will. Especially since the delivery warehouse locations are separate from the dispensary brick and mortar, like the actual dispensary. That seems like more of a possibility, having delivery extended beyond the hours that are listed here. Again, because delivery is not coming out of like a brick and mortar store. I think part of it is that delivering or operating past a certain amount of hours would present like a security issue. That's part of the concern that I've heard. And then the other thing is that so Dutchie is, at least for the first 150, is the app or the website or the person that you process the payments and orders through. And there is the ability to place orders in advance. So I can place an order for tomorrow first thing 8 a.m. or the next day 8 a.m. or whatever, for whatever I want. And actually the selection that you have is larger when you order ahead. because just of how the delivery and stock things is going to work out. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, that you will always have the ability to place an order 24 hours. You just may not be able to receive it outside of those hours, but you can place an order at any time on the website. Kind of like you go into like Uber Eats or Grubhub, and you can schedule it. If the restaurant is closed, you can schedule it for the next day at whatever time. So that's something to think about too.
So I just wanted to get in the distance things, because I think this is another thing that really needs some commenting. So originally, I think it was when the card guidelines first came out, it said it was going to follow the liquor guidelines. So 500 feet from a school, 200 feet from a house of worship, and those were measured door to door. So center of the main door to the house of worship, center of the main door to the dispensary. That's how the house of worship thing still works. It's door to door. If the door is set off of the street, so if it's a church and there's like a huge flight of steps or a path that you have to walk down to get to the front door, it's the center of those steps or that path. If you're on a corner, if your dispensary is on a corner, you have to measure on both streets. You go in a straight line down the street, down both streets. But now for schools, it used to be 500 feet door to door. Now it's, I'm going to back up. For churches, you measure for the main door, emergency exits, back doors, garages, basement doors, any doors that don't have hardware on the outside where it's strictly a fire exit, those don't count. It's the main entrance and exit for the house of worship. For the schools, it's now saying 500 feet to school grounds. So if it's the play yard and there's a fence there, even if there's no entrance, like that's the school grounds. So it's really increasing the amount of space. Like I even know, like, so on PS 187 is on Carbini, but the back of the school ends up on Fort Washington. The school isn't even there, but the school grounds are there. So you would then, not that there's anything up there on Fort Washington, but if that were a retail kind of street, that would be out of consideration because the school grounds are there. So, and also now they've given municipalities the ability to include all those things that I talked about: playgrounds, community centers, libraries, anything that's holding, children's activities, preschools, which those kind of are in all sorts of businesses and facilities. So I really think that
have someone chiming in about how the regs don't line up with the law. The regs say door and the law says grounds. So you're saying it's actually like inverted. So, but it's a good point. And then it's 1,000 between dispensaries, right, Naomi? Yeah, so it's 1,000 feet between dispensaries. So you're talking about a lot of measurements and a lot of restriction. So, and in terms of New York State market, that's a lot.
So in municipalities with under 20,000 people, they have to be 2,000 feet from each other. So 2 dispensaries can't open up within 2,000 feet of each other. That's probably 500 feet, I think, is, if I remember correctly, I think it's 3 or 4 blocks.
I thought it was 2.
Yeah, I forget. And
it's
then
250 a block, I think.
Yeah. So then if you're in some place that's over 20,000 people population, then it is 1,000 feet. But the municipalities have the ability to change this. So New York City could say, okay, like there's a need here, or it's congested, like we will allow this. So that's a little bit up to interpretation, but you're right. There's so many distance requirements that it's really gotten a lot more complicated. And I think originally it was following the rules for liquor businesses, and now it's sort of expanded. And dispensaries have a lot more security. You can't be a child and wander in. They're checking IDs. They're keeping an eye on this. You can walk into a liquor store with your kid if you want. Kids can walk in off the street. They'll shoo you out, but
I remember seeing a comment earlier asking if dispensaries, because there are dispensaries in other states that require that one. No,
Waiting room.
New York ones don't, which is bugged out to me. But no, so far from what I've seen, they don't. I think they should, but they don't. You can.
And I don't think somebody else asked if there's any regulation on what floor, like if they can be on the second floor.
I think it's
they have to be accessible at street level, but I'm not sure. It's worded a little bit weird, but
I would think you would be in violation of ADA, some kind of ADA compliance. I'm sure ADA compliance is covered in law because we want this to be accessible and inclusive. So if you can't get a wheelchair to the second floor, you're probably not compliant.
Yeah. It does say it has to be accessible from the street level, but it doesn't say located on the street level. So that would be something I would really look into that.
The ADA, the Americans with Disability Act compliance.
Yeah.
Would override
like
that.
if you were going to be on the second floor, you would for sure have to have an elevator.
For sure. Also make sure your website is ADA compliant, because there's someone getting sued right now because their website isn't. I don't know I can't remember who, but it's happening. And I mentioned the waiting room thing, not because of the age compliance thing. I think it's more of a sort of managing like traffic and flow into the space and seeing. But I think that's probably the reason why they did away with the waiting room, because NYC traffic, particularly like human, like people coming in and out of the dispensaries, they don't want lines outside on the sidewalks. So that's probably why they did away with the waiting room, especially in the beginning of the market right now, because the lines on the sidewalks, it's like not manageable. So if you had a waiting room, that's another argument for like the larger dispensary square foot, like the square footage being larger. Like in other places, when it's larger, usually that waiting room is like a nice, cool, vibey waiting area so that you don't have that line outside. But I don't know what the thinking was in New York, because the ones Housing Works doesn't have a waiting room, and neither does Smack Village.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? I think I lost a couple pages, and I'm sorry, I can't.
I think you covered a lot of good stuff. And
we covered a lot, and I think the distances and the the stuff we just covered at the end, that was like the main part I didn't want to lose. So if there's any other questions from out there.
Oh, we got some feedback.
Let me mute her and then I'll bring her back. I think she might have a little issue with sound.
I love that. Backstage.
Real life here. I literally pulled up all the questions in the chat. So if anybody has any additional ones, please drop them in the chat. You can also send us a note on like our respective pages. The Canadiva, New York Small Farmer, Mary Says NY, and Audubon Hayes. And are we wrapping up? Are we good? We got anything else we want to cover?
I just want to say, like, shopkeepers, folks that want to be retail dispensary operators, please send your comments and send those diverse, inclusive comments in. Business is different, whether you're in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Rochester, Buffalo, business is different. Like, we have different traffic patterns, we have different customers, it's just different. And so, like, I think there should be a ton of commentary on this, because we don't want it to be inhibitive to our culture, to our innovation to our entrepreneurial creativity. There's so much that can be done in New York retail, and I don't think it's necessarily what we all initially think. I think it could be so much more. And so the fact that consumption is side by side, I think there's a lot of creativity that can go into this. So it's really exciting.
And I think too, when you're submitting comments, put in, don't just say this isn't going to work. Offer
I don't like it.
if you have an idea, yeah. If you have an idea, write that down. This would help me if it was more like this, or, here's an idea. They want to hear that. And that will help them. So include all that. And, the whole purpose of this, obviously we want to go through the regs, but we really want to encourage comments. And so on Nicole's website, New York Small Pharma, she can explain it now, but she has a great way to share your comments. So let's just go through that.
Add it. Hold on, I had it. Hold on.
Yes. Nicole, how many comments did you get in since our last talk?
I think from last night it was 159 clicks.
Amazing.
No, that's amazing. Okay, that's so great. Nicole, you want to walk them through sharing their voices? Can you hear us?
You guys are freezing for me. Yeah, am I freezing?
No, you can go right ahead.
I think. Okay, you guys are freezing on my end. So I'm at roll call. So thanks, guys.
We can see you.
So on our website, we have.
Go ahead.
There's a delay. Okay. So thank you. On our website, there is a regulations button, and you can drop it down and see a timetable very similar like OCM. You can click on the regulations, and if we have our comments up, which we don't yet, we have them only for packaging and labeling, which is due on the 30th. Or you can click on the share your voice link, and that'll open up an email with our comments already populated in the body of the email address. Button or open up a blank email, but it's an easy click. Already, you don't have to remember the address to send the email to. So we have that available for you. So I hope you take advantage of it. And thank you, guys, for holding it down tonight, and Naomi and Glenna for being guests here. It was really good listening to you guys.
Thanks for having us.
So the packaging regulations are on her website. Those comments are due on the 31st. And in those packaging guidelines is the thing about the house brands. So go in and check that and comment on that. Please share your voice on that one. And then I'm going to I'll share the notes from today, and maybe Annette can share her notes from the other day. And we can post those on our link trees as well for people to sort of check back on any thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right, cool. Again, if you have any questions,
Number 2,
Naomi, we've never met. I'm so honored to meet you and look forward to meeting you again in the future. Thank you and congratulations. Glenna, girl, we cool. So I'll be up in Rochester in March, and I'm excited to see you and Rachel and the Rochester fam. And I know we have some Rochester folks watching, so that's amazing. We've got wide reach.
Yeah, come see the farm. Come see it. Naomi, congratulations. Love to support you. So
thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to the conversation. I feel y'all's support, and I can't wait to open, and I hope y'all come.
We can't wait for you to open either. We can't wait. The Bronx can't wait.
Is it the Bronx? Are you coming to the Bronx?
The Bronx.
Yeah, we won in the Bronx. Yeah, the Bronx.
I'm a Bronx girl, born and raised. I'm excited. I am so excited for that. We lost Nicole.
Naomi, you want to just tell people Nube?
Yeah, so Nube, the Instagram is Nube NYC, like it's there in my name. It means cloud in Spanish. It's not noob. It's Nube. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. you know, it's all good. But Nube NYC will be opening in the Bronx.
Amazing.
Yes, Black
It's
owned,
gonna
Latino owned, Black Latino owned, all the things.
Women owned.
Women
Women
owned,
owned, queer
Bronx,
person owned,
Bronx
all the things.
owned, legacy owned, all the things. Good for you. Thank you.
All right, Tuesday night, guys. Tune in again.
Yes, we're back again. Tuesday, we're doing Cultivation, Nursery, and Micro. Nicole, yeah. Right. That's what we're doing on Tuesday. And Thursday, is our final segment where we're doing co-op, delivery, and transportation. Tell your friends. We want to educate everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. Replays will be uploaded on all of our channels. So that's it, ladies. We good?
Oh,
Good.
wait. Also, someone asked, is Nube hiring? We will be very soon. So follow us and see.
Oh, I love it.
And we want to give people jobs, and we want to, you know, there are many ways into this industry. So for sure.
Yes, and CWI, there's still time to sign up for the Cannabis Workforce Initiative 10-week free certification program. So if you know people that are not applying for licenses but still want to be active players in this industry, maybe want to work at Nube and be a certified employee, you know, be part of unions and have those kind of conversations, sign up with CWI and get your certification from New York State, which I think is pretty awesome when you think about it. And where can you see job postings? I will tell you right now, you know the place to go for jobs?
Hey!
Melissa! Yes!
Shout out to
you
Melissa.
guys?
Hello, how are you?
So that is.
I missed this. I can't wait to watch the recording.
Yes. So that is Melissa Gibson, our dear friend, owner of Hemp and Humanity up in Woodstock, New York. The Wi-Fi in Woodstock is a pain in the butt. So good to see you. Melissa is having an event tonight. She does a gathering of all of the folks in the cannabis supply chain in the Hudson Valley area.
Amazing. Yeah.
Hudson Valley is going to be full of cannabis. You're going to drive
lights
up
on,
the highway and all you're going to smell.
We had over about 100 people here. We had Ulster
Amazing.
County Executive Jen Metzger, who used to be on the Cannabis Control Board, and Michelle Hinchy from New York State. Absolutely. The Hudson Valley is ready, you guys. We have a lot going on here, so come on up.
Amazing.
So exciting. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you.
There you go. I can do this.
We got all the
I
cannabis
gotta do one more shout out. We can't do retail dispensary without shouting out Roland and his son Darius, Far Rockaway team, Smack Village. You know, like this is like social equity to the max. This is our first justice impacted card license holder. Roland, you know, the quote from Roland is heavy the head that wears the crown. And he's like taking this very seriously. Of course, it's his life's work. And so thanks for the support for Smack Village. Let's show up for them because that's what it's about. It's like support and standing up this market with all of us helping each other and all of us showing up for each other. Just like they're doing upstate, just like we do downstate, just like we're going to show up for Naomi in the Bronx. Like we've got to do that for this next 12 to 18 months while these card guys are rolling out. Men and women. Let me clarify.
Yeah, now it begins. I've been in this industry professionally for 8 years, and now it begins. I'm tired. No, I'm kidding. We're just starting. Oh my goodness. All right, it's always a pleasure to be with my fellow Canadivas. That's what we do. We bring education. Nicole from New York Small Pharma, Naomi from Nube NYC, Beck from Mary Says NY, Annette from Audubon Hay Society, Glenna from Glenna CBD, and me, Tanya from the Canadiva. Thank you all for showing up, spreading the word, and we will see you on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, community. Have a great night.
Everybody.
Good night.